What is up, everybody? Back again with another video. Today, I have something very special to share with you. I made a checklist that is going to help me track the bottoms and hopefully maximize my portfolio. My name is Tafari. I am 24. I live in Canada, and I have been investing in Bitcoin for probably a little over 5 years now. And I am doing a series where I'm turning $10,000 into $100,000. In this series, I show every mistake I made, every trade, every single thing I'm doing, all my decisions, and the goal is to learn and grow this portfolio with you, the audience. In today's episode, I'm going to share the checklist I made with you. It is made up of 3 main components. It is on-chain data and analysis. Next, we have the technical charts and signals. Lastly, we have the sentiment. I will be going over 8 different indicators that I will be looking at to assess whether the bottom is in and it's a good time to buy. Now, before we get into the actual checklist and the signals I'm looking for, we normally review where my portfolio is at and how we're doing so far. So that will be at the end of the video this time. So stay tuned for that. I will show my whole portfolio, what has changed, what I've been doing. Now, let's get straight into the checklist. First, we got on-chain data. The 4 main indicators I'm looking at with on-chain data is 1, the MVRV score. The second one is the Puell multiple. The next on-chain signal is the Bitcoin supply in profit and loss. And lastly, we have long-term holder supply. Then we go on to our second tier, which is the chart data and signals. Firstly, we have weekly RSI bullish divergence. Secondly, we have the Gaussian channel and specifically the flip to red. I will go over this and show you actual pictures. And then lastly, we have the 200-week moving average. Now, the third tier, specifically only one thing I'm looking at for sentiment is the fear and greed index. So now I will go over live examples and show you exactly what I'm looking at to indicate whether we are near a bottom or at a bottom. Now, the first metric I talked about was the MVRV score. MVRV stands for market value to realized value. This indicator as a whole basically just tells you whether on average the market is sitting in a profit or a loss. The Z-score on this chart basically standardizes the ratio between the two. So a basic way of understanding this, to simplify it, is when the Z-score is high, most of the market is sitting on profit. When the Z-score is low, most of the market is sitting on a loss. Now, why is this important? Because every single instance where Bitcoin has bottomed, the Z-score is sitting around 1 to 0. There are very few metrics that are as reliable as this one. So this is the first one I'm looking at in order to make my decisions. The next on-chain metric I'm looking at is the Puell multiple. Now, the Bitcoin network is held up by the miners who produce the Bitcoin. This is essentially the infrastructure, and these miners mine blocks. They get a certain reward, and essentially they can either sell that reward into the market, or they can hold it to preserve their value. Now, what the Puell multiple shows us is when the Puell multiple is high, the miners are making a large amount of profit relative to their expenses. And when the Puell multiple is low, that essentially indicates that the miners are making less on average than they normally would in more profitable times. Essentially, they're barely covering costs of the electricity and the upkeep of the miners. This essentially puts them in a position where they have no choice but to sell the coins that they mine, or else they can't fund operations. So it's basically like, just for example, when you're making 10 times the money as your expenses, you have money to save and put away. But if you're making 1-to-1, it becomes a very minimal margin, and you might have to sell the coins that you mine to fund the miners. Why this is important? It's mainly due to the fact that when miners capitulate, that is typically the bottom. When they have to sell, that typically creates a floor in terms of Bitcoin's sell pressure, and then it's essentially only up from there. That is what historically we have been shown. So that is why I'm watching the Puell multiple and why it is important. Now, the third metric I'm looking at is the net unrealized profit and loss. This measures the difference between what the entire Bitcoin market is right now versus what everyone paid for it. And it's expressed as a percent of the total market cap. It basically represents whether the market is up or down and by how much. So essentially, think of the percent is the higher the percent, the more likely the average person is in a profit. And this is typically marked by a feeling of euphoria. And then when it gets to 0 or below, that's typically where everybody is sitting on a loss, or most people are sitting on a loss. So essentially, looking at this, we can see when the most pain is, when the most fear is, and when everybody is essentially down bad. So that's typically the point at which things start to recover, there's more inflow, and then, we get rich. Now, the fourth on-chain metric I am looking at is the long-term holder supply. Now, what this is because Bitcoin is a ledger that has every transaction, every wallet, essentially we can see what people are holding, how much, and for how long. So the way that this one specifically is calculated is if a coin has not moved for more than 5 months, I think it is, then we consider that a long-term holding of the coin. What this means is as price goes down, but holder supply goes up, that typically means that even though price is decreasing, people are still holding their bags and there isn't as much selling going on because people are holding for the long term. It's essentially like the richest people, or the smart money as people call it, are holding on for the long term, which means you want to do as the rich do or do as the smart money does. Don't be like everybody else. So as that increases, as the long-term supply holder increases, that's typically a sign that the bottom is near or close. And this has been demonstrated just through previous history. There is less long-term holding at tops and more long-term holding at bottoms. Now that the on-chain metrics are understood and I have explained them, we go on to the technical charts and the signals that they show. The first one that I'm looking at is the weekly RSI, and I'm looking for bullish divergence. Now, full disclaimer, this is not the most accurate indicator, but it is still important data to look at. The way that this works is RSI is essentially understood as momentum. So as the RSI is high, there's a lot of momentum carrying the price in the direction it's moving. And if there is a low RSI, that typically means that whatever direction we're going is exhausted. The momentum isn't there. So what we look at is if the price is going down, but the RSI is picking back up, what that means essentially is the momentum has been exhausted on the downside and it's primed for a reversal due to the fact that the momentum is picking up. Now, I have charts I can show here. Back in 2015, we saw this at the bottom and we saw this in 2022. These were very clear signs of bullish divergence in which it marked the bottom fairly clearly. So in our confluence and our collection of data, it's a pretty useful indicator that I will be looking at over time. Now, onto our second technical indicator, we have the Gaussian channel. This one's a bit more complicated in how it's calculated, but very simply, it's basically like an average range that Bitcoin's price stays in. We can call it a normal behavior curve. Why this is relevant and why it's something I'm looking for is because there's typically, as price goes up, we are in the green zone, which means we are either above the Gaussian channel or within it, trending up. And then when it flips red, specifically when the price goes into the Gaussian channel and then breaks below, we typically see a flip of red and then shortly after the bottom arrives. So in every instance from 2015 to 2019 to 2022 or 2021, every bottom has been first signaled by a flipping of the Gaussian channel to red and a breakthrough. Typically the breakthrough and the flipping of red happen at similar times, but there are instances where it breaks through, then it flips red, or it flips red, then it breaks through. Regardless, these are both signals that the bottom is near. So that is something I'm looking for and something that I have added to my checklist. Now, the third and final one is the 200-week moving average, specifically on the weekly chart. This is basically like a price floor for Bitcoin. Anytime it is at the 200-week moving average or below, this is very evidentially a good time to buy. So when we see the price near there or below it, this is essentially another piece of the puzzle in understanding Bitcoin's price, when it's cheap, and when it's a good time to buy. Now that we understand tier 1, tier 2, the last one I look at is the fear and greed index, and this is a sentiment indicator. This is essentially an indicator that just explains how people are feeling at any given time in the market, whether people are feeling greedy because they are in a lot of profit, or they're feeling fearful because they are in a loss. It's essentially a metric of psychology, so how people are feeling at any given time. And the reason this is important is because I think it was Warren Buffett who said it, but this is just general investing knowledge that when people are greedy, be very fearful, and when people are fearful, be very greedy. So it means when everybody's worried and fear is high, you should be accumulating and buying more. When people are more greedy, you should be a bit fearful and look to sell. This is kind of like the cherry on top to pull together all of our indicators. Okay, now that we got all of that out of the way, I know slightly complicated, there's a lot of info there, but to simplify this, I've made a checklist for you guys to look at, to visually see. We can see that we have 2 out of the 8 indicators so far. So the MVRV score, we currently are not at bottom levels. We're very close actually. The Puell multiple, same thing. Supply and profit and loss, similar story. The long-term holders, we are seeing a slight uptick, but not to the degree we expect, or at least to my degree of confirmation. We have not seen a weekly bullish divergence, we have not seen a bullish divergence in the weekly RSI. The Gaussian channel has not flipped red yet. It has broken below, so we're just waiting for a flip to red. That will confirm that signal. And then we are basically at the 200-week moving average. I don't expect it to close below, but we have seen one cycle where it did. So that would be a guaranteed confirmation. But for now, we will check off this indicator. And then the fear and greed index, we were at 5 in mid-February, I think. So that's a definite sign that times are very fearful and being greedy might be a good idea. Now, hopefully all of this was educational. Hopefully I explained it well, and we will be watching very closely, checking these off as time goes, and definitely adjusting to what the evidence says. Now for what you've all been waiting for, I'm going to show you my portfolio. So right here, we have my TFSA. This is what I am buying everything in. I'm buying Bitcoin ETFs. My second DCA hit last Monday. It was another $250. So currently we have $500 invested in a Bitcoin ETF, $9,500 still left in cash. We are up $17 as of right now, which is cool. You know, we're still hoping prices drop a little more to accumulate more. But essentially nothing has changed. I still have my DCA strategy set. I have my limit orders pending, and I am essentially just waiting for all of my checklists to be active and present. And then once all these signals come together, I will be low in the bag, buying up heavy, and praying, because at the end of the day, you never know what's going to happen. We can only go with the best evidence we have. I have shared my evidence with you. If you found it useful, if you found it educational, let me know. Support is greatly appreciated. Thank you all for watching. I will be here every Monday uploading a weekly update. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Really means a lot. And any tools you need, I have links in the description. Support greatly helps. And yeah, so hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.